Hi there. Welcome to our next session in our prenatal series, Non-Medical Comfort Measures. This particular session is extremely important because it does highlight for you many techniques that you can utilize during your labor to help you maybe stay home a little bit longer, to maybe go longer without an epidural if you choose to, or potentially go all the way without an epidural, depending on sort of how you manage it. So with this, let's get into it. Again, as the other sessions, this is not to be used for medical advice. We're just going to lay out for you what your options are as far as non-medical pain management goes. And should you have any questions or concerns about anything that you've heard, if you need clarification on anything in this particular session, please feel free to email us at support@torontodoulagroup.com. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to tell you a little story first, and that story is about a book called Childbirth Without Fear that was written by a gentleman named Dr. Grantley Dick Reed, and it was written in the 50s. It's actually still in print today, but it was written based on his experiences in World War I in Europe as a medical practitioner. While he was over in Europe, he attended the births of several women, and at the time, because at the time birth was not home-based or was not hospital-based like it was in North America. It had actually still was done at home. In North America at the turn of the century, last century, birth had moved from home to hospital. So he met several birthing families at that time, and one in particular, they all had the same experience, but one in particular, he came to her, she was laboring in her kitchen, and he tried to administer chloroform to her, because at the time in North America, this was the pain relief option of choice. And she batted it away and proceeded to deliver her baby. And afterwards, she said, "What were you trying to give me?" And he said, "Well, I was trying to give you chloroform for the pain." And she said, "Oh, was it supposed to hurt?" So what she experienced was not what would have been called pain. However, in North America, women were being given chloroform or twilight sleep and having their babies delivered via forceps because of the intense pain that they were experiencing. And he wondered what these birthing families were bringing to birth that North American families were not. He tried and he tried and he tried and he couldn't figure it out. But being a good scientist, he kept at it and he turned the question on its head. What weren't they bringing to birth? Well, after some thought and after some discussion and after some research, he discovered that what they weren't bringing to birth was fear. At that time, because birth was still home-based, it hadn't moved to hospital yet, birthing women would have seen births of their siblings, of their neighbors, their friends, their aunties, all of that. They would have experienced birth before giving birth themselves and seen that it's just birth. So he deduced that fear caused tension in the body, which caused pain, which caused more fear and more tension and more pain, and you get the fear, tension, pain cycle. So in all this, the key will be that we need to try and figure out how to remove fear. Now, I'm hoping that if you've gone through these sessions, that you will understand that birth is really just a physiological function of your body. And hopefully then that you won't be quite as fearful, but you definitely want to stay from the internet. Stop Googling everything. You should probably try and read better books. There is, if you're still sort of early, mid in your pregnancy, Anne Douglas's Mother of All Pregnancy Books is a way better book than Say What to Expect. There's lots of new books that are out there now as well that are giving you more facts as opposed to fear-based information. Stop listening to your friends' horrible birth stories. I know that's hard, but if you can, try and stay away from that while you're pregnant, that's not a bad idea. And as I say, stop looking up births on YouTube and whatnot. If you want to see birth, again, watch our vaginal birth session or our epidural session, and you'll get to see birth. And of course, we are going to see birth in this particular session as well when I show you the movie at the end. So there's lots of ways to sort of reduce fear, but a lot of that's going to have to come from you. Now, if we can remove tension, which is what I'm here to try and show you how to do now, that's going to help. Now, I'm not saying if we get rid of fear and tension, we're going to get rid of pain. However, if we remove the fear, if we lessen the tension, perhaps we can reduce the pain. Okay. We're going to do that through a number of different ways of relaxing during birth. I know that sounds not right, but it is possible to relax during birth, but you do have to work at it. So let's go through the list of what we've got. You relax this way, watching movies and TV during your downtime before you even go into labor. This can help in early labor as well. TV and movies are kind of a form of self-hypnosis, and they kind of sort of take you to another place and you're really kind of zoned out, you're not really paying attention. That's a form, as I say, of self-hypnosis where you're not really focused on anything in particular. I will say as well with movies and TV that you should probably watch something that's really funny. We want something really funny because when you laugh, your body is going to release endorphins, and endorphins are our body's own natural painkiller and natural relaxant. I will say too, what I used to suggest to people is that they walk to the local Blockbuster, get a funny movie, and then walk back in early labor. But of course, there's no Blockbusters now, and I super just aged myself. But now you can download a funny movie, and while it's downloading, you can go for a walk and then come back and laugh a little, and that can be very helpful. And especially the early stages of labor where things are, is it labor, is it not labor, what's happening? So that you can maybe not focus on the labor itself. All right, what else have we got here? Music. Same idea as TV and movies. Music has a way of transporting you, of taking you to a different place. And music can be very uplifting for your mood as well. I recommend that before labor even begins, some of your homework that you do is that you look at you create for yourself some playlists. So for early labor, something a little more upbeat, a little more dancey, get you moving, keep you jiving and moving. Jiving, how old am I? And then for later labor, you'll want something a little more sedate, a little more calming. And it doesn't have to be that, spa music with waterfalls and birds chirping and all of that stuff, if that's not what you're into. Music is extremely personal and it can be whatever you like. A hot bath or a hot shower. If you are a bath person in particular, getting into a nice hot bath or even a nice hot shower, your body just lets go and relaxes. And that's really what we're shooting for. So you can have a hot bath. I know you've been told sort of during your pregnancy not to have a hot bath, not to have jacuzzis, things like that. But at this point, baby's cooked. When you're in labor, baby's already cooked. You can't mess anything up at this point. I will say, however, one thing that to remember with a hot bath or hot shower, what was hot before for you might be scalding when you're in labor. Because in labor, your body becomes hypersensitive to everything. All of your senses become hypersensitive. So sense of touch is going to be even more intense. So as I say, what might have been hot for you before might be scalding now. So you want to make sure that you're checking those temperatures before you get into them, before you submerge your whole body in, and make sure that you're not going to burn yourself. Okay. But definitely a hot bath, and check if your hospital has tubs or jacuzzis that you can use during labor. Particularly during COVID, it's important to make sure that it is available to you. But if you have a bath at home that you can utilize, absolutely, you can use that during labor. And if you're not a bath person, a nice hot shower with the hot water on your back or on your belly can be very comforting and very relaxing. And you don't have to stand in a shower. You can sit down on the edge if you have a handheld shower head and whatnot, and that can be very helpful for you. All right, what else have we got? Go for a walk. So some people will say, oh yeah, in early labor, you got to go for a walk, go for a walk, go for a walk. Let's walk this baby out. And absolutely, I do encourage walking because I think it helps sort of move the labor along. It can be very distracting as well. You're not fast, and that's okay. But we want to make sure that you're not walking to the point of exhaustion. You're going to have to pair that up with some rest as well. Walking is very good to, as I say, keep labor going and keep your mind occupied. Maybe put some music on and you go for a walk, but try not to do it to the point of exhaustion because remember, you are going to need some of that energy for the end of your labor to actually push this baby out. And rest. So, rest is extremely important as well. So, doing something that's physical and then pairing that up with some rest, you are going to need to, stockpile some energy for later on when labor gets really exciting. But definitely, if you can lie down and you can rest, absolutely do that. Eating comforting food. Sometimes, it's not a bad thing to eat your feelings, but sometimes just having some light snacks or some comforting food that maybe you've been avoiding. You don't want to eat too much heavy food because your body's trying to manage labor. It doesn't want to have to deal with digestion on top of everything else. But definitely eating something that's going to make you happy. If you are feeling nauseous, though, obviously you want to hold back on a little bit, but eat what you like. Again, if you've been avoiding certain foods because that's what you've been told for your pregnancy, again, baby's cooked. You can have it now, okay? But again, nothing too heavy and nothing, not overly stuffing yourself. Meditation and yoga is extremely good for labor. If you've been doing any yoga or meditation or relaxation techniques prior to labor, which I highly encourage. Getting into meditating or yoga in the last months of your pregnancy is a great idea. So it will help you to be calm and relaxed, but it will also help you to get into that calm and relaxed when labor starts. So you want to practice that before labor actually begins, so it's easier to get into it when labor does begin. There's definitely um, what do you say, apps and whatnot that have free guided imagery and meditation and guided meditation that you can utilize. And again, a lot of them are free. Calm and Headspace are available. I'm a big lover of Calm because I love everything that they sort of have in there. So definitely something to consider. And now position changes. So the handouts that you have are going to have a bunch of position changes in them. And the video itself that I'm going to show you is going to talk about position changes. So I'm going to kind of leave that. But one thing I will say with them is if you change into a different position, it's going to ramp things up a little bit. Just give it a minute. If you, after a few contractions, say 3 or 4, you can't get back on top of your contractions, then go back to what was working before. And if the hospital staff or other people suggest position changes to you and you try it and it doesn't work, then nix it. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. But what you'll find is it's going to take you maybe 2, 3, 4 contractions to get back on top of things once you change positions. And that's not a bad thing because it keeps labor moving forward. Okay. So position changes are usually the best ones are going to be upright forward leaning to help keep baby in a good position and to keep this labor moving. Birth ball. See if your hospital has birth balls. They're basically just big round exercise balls that are usually used for physiotherapy, but they can be very helpful in creating space. Sitting can be more comfortable because they're a little bit more squishy as opposed to sitting on a hard bed or a hard chair. But they can, in that sitting, you can, one of the best ones that I love is putting the ball by the bed, pillows on the bed, sitting on the ball, and then leaning over the bed and resting in between the contractions can be very helpful. And you're in a bit of a squatted position, which can help open up the hips and allow baby to come down. And then you've got the rolling motion, as one of my doula partner says, do the doula hula to again help keep things moving and rolling around. Counter pressure. So if you are having any issues in your back, any back pain that you're having, counter pressure. So putting sort of two hands, two fists, your partner uses two fists on either side of your lower tailbone area can be very helpful. And you can tell them to do it harder, softer, shift around a little bit if necessary. And that can be very helpful. If you are as well having issues in your back, heat and cold can be very helpful in that area too. And the video is going to talk about that. You can also put just one hand into that area. Sometimes using tennis balls as well can be very helpful to put that pressure into that area, which can, again, create more pressure into a specific area and less pressure on your partner or your support person's wrist, which can be very helpful. I've certainly sprained my wrist a couple times in the years that I've been a doula, not using tennis balls. So definitely make sure that your partner that's helping you or your support person that's helping you is, watching their own sort of body mechanics and whatnot as well. Now we're going to get into, I'm going to pull both of these up because we're going to talk about them sort of off screen. Massage and breathing. Massage works really, really well in the case of labor because, especially if the support person has access to your whole back, that light touch, that it works on a couple of, sorry, let me back up. It works on a couple of different levels. So what it does is there are these short muscle fibers close to the surface of the skin that when touched release endorphins. And again, we talked about endorphins being our body's own natural relaxant and our body's own natural painkiller. The other thing that it does is it will, the brain works like a parking lot. So there's only so many spots in it for pleasurable sensations to go. And pleasurable sensations travel to the brain faster than pain sensations. So if we can clog up the brain with pleasurable sensations like light touch, that can sort of block some of the spaces for the pain sensations to go. If you have access to the whole back, you want to try and use sort of the tips of your fingers or the backs of your hands and doing rhythmic, sort of symmetrical motion up and down the back. And if it has to be harder, softer, whatever, the birthing parent's going to let their support person know. But you're going to want to make sure that you're doing it in a nice rhythmic pattern, because that can sort of allow the birthing parent to get into that zone, to follow that pattern and focus on that pattern, that rhythm, as opposed to what's happening with them. If the support person has to stop at any point because they need to shake out their hands or whatever, you want to make sure, support people, that you're stopping after the contraction is done. You don't want to stop in the middle of the contraction, because then they're in a zone and you're going to yank them out of that zone, and that's not going to be fair. So make sure that you're practicing that massage, and the video is going to go over a little bit of that. No, it's not. Okay, so now let's talk about breathing. I'm going to take us off screen for that so that you can see me more fully. So what we're talking about as far as breathing goes, and if you've if you've done any yoga at any point in time, which I'm hoping that you have, what we're talking about is belly breathing. If you've seen the video on vaginal birth, if you've seen that session, you will have seen the video where the uterus actually rises up inside during a contraction. And when it does that, that's how a contraction monitor works. It's just sitting on your belly. How does it know you're having a contraction? Well, it's measuring the surface tension of the uterus rising up against the inside and putting pressure. But if you're in labor and you're going, and everything's all scrunched up, what's happening is the uterus is inside going, oh my God, I have no space. How am I going to do my job? Because the uterus, again, if you've seen an earlier session, the uterus is a muscle. It's 3 muscle groupings that work together. And like any other muscle grouping, it has a full range of motion. But if we're not giving the space it needs to do that full range of motion, it will actually need more contractions to do the same amount of work. So if we give it the space it needs, then it can maybe be a little more efficient. Your contractions can work a little more efficiently, and maybe you won't need as many. That's one of the theories behind hypnobirthing. So what I want, what we're going to do during labor is we're going to do what's called belly breathing or abdominal breathing. So putting one hand on your belly, I'm not sure you can see that well, but putting one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest. You can follow along with me now. Nobody's watching you, so you can do this. What you're going to do is you're going to take a big breath in, but you're going to blow your belly out. Imagine there's a balloon in your belly and you're going to blow that balloon up, and you need to create the space inside. So the breathing will look, instead of a big breath going, what you're doing, what you're going to do actually is breathe with your abdomen. So it will look a little bit more like this. So less movement up here, more movement down here. Now, I know that those with babies in your belly, this isn't going to be the easiest thing to do because your babies are kind of crushing your lungs up into your chest cavity at this point. However, when you get closer to the end of your pregnancy, baby is going to fit further down and you will have more space up here, okay? And it's in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth, or in through your nose and out through your nose, but not in through your mouth and out through your mouth. And the reason for that is because when you breathe in and out through your mouth, you can almost feel the tension rising in your body when you do that. Remember, we're trying to get rid of tension. So what that does is it actually elicits the fight or flight response. And when you are in fight or flight, you're basically stressed. And when that happens, oxygenated blood gets moved away from baby and your uterus to the defensive system. So brain, heart, lungs, arms and legs, to either put up a fight or get the hell out of there. Okay? So the uterus and the sort of the mechanics of keeping baby alive doesn't fit into that system. So you're actually drawing oxygenated blood away from baby. So we don't want to do that. So in through your nose and out through your nose, or in through your nose and out through your mouth. Right now, during early labor, breathing will be fairly normal, not a whole lot going on. And then what will happen is things will start to get a little bit more intense, and you'll have to do more of this concentrated breathing. You might have your eyes closed, and that's totally fine too. Then as things get more intense, especially if you're not at the hospital yet, or you're going to try and go as long as possible without an epidural, or to the end without an epidural, the breathing might not be as deep, and that's okay, but we don't want it to be super fast either. So the breathing might look a little bit more like, but we don't want it to be, okay. If you start to hyperventilate and pass out, the hospital staff, the midwives get a little bit upset at that. So try not to do that. But we want to make sure as well that any type of breathing that you're doing is going to be very rhythmic. So it's in and out and in and out, not in and out, in and out. When you hold it up at the top, you're adding more tension. So we're trying to just keep in with that flow of breathing in and out, very like a jellyfish. Okay. Then as you get closer to the end, the breathing, and this is where my inner actor comes in, the breathing could look like this. Oh my God, here comes another one. Breathing in is instinctual. Breathing out, not so much. But if you're not breathing, who else isn't breathing? Baby. So make sure that when you are breathing, you're breathing out. And partners, I don't breathe loudly normally, but when I am with my clients as a doula, I do try and breathe loudly so that they will get the rhythm of the breath that we're looking for. So you might have to breathe with the birthing parent and actually watch the breathing. Now, the breathing could look like this. And if you're not paying attention, yeah, honey, you're doing a great job. You're going to miss the fact that Her palms are going to be bleeding from her knuckles digging in, shoulders embedded into the ears, jaw cracking with the tension that's in here. So remember, we're trying to remove tension. So again, partners, you need to pay attention and watch for those sort of tension-filled areas and try and let that go. Now, what I will suggest is you don't tell the birthing parent to relax, because if you do, they're going to punch you in the face. Just telling someone to relax actually invokes more tension. So taking, you know, use your Thesaurus app and find every other way on the planet to say relax without actually saying relax. As a doula, I will say relax, but I use it in a bunch of, other words, so it will often get missed. Just let go of that tension, breathe it out, let go, relax, no scrunchy face, okay? Holding the hand, things like that. Hand on the shoulder to remind them to let go. This is all ways that you can physically get the tension to leave, or, lots of oxygen in for baby, breathe out that tension, blow it out, blow it to me, relax into it. You got this. Encouragement to keep them focused on that breathing. Okay. Now, there is one funky breath that I will utilize if it becomes necessary, and that's horse lips. So do it with me now. Horse lips can help if you feel like you have to push, but they're telling you that you can't, or you feel like you have to push, but you're not at the hospital yet. Horse lips can buy you a little bit of time. So because the jaw and the uterus, the cervix, are connected, which is another reason why we don't want any tension in the jaw area. Because these two places are connected, literally, doing horse lips, you actually can't push and do horse lips at the same time. You can only do one thing at a time. So I had a client once who had been induced earlier in the day with a medicine called Cervidil, and it's a prostaglandin gel pill. It's a pill on a string, and they had been induced in about the lunchtime type area time frame. And around 11 or midnight or so, I got to their home, and they were laboring fine, and we were headed to the hospital. But they were in the kitchen and they were doing stuff, putting stuff away, and all I hear from the kitchen is, oh my damn, are they pushing? Uh-oh, okay. My brain goes into hyperdrive. Like, all right, we got to go to the hospital. I don't know what's happening in here, but we got to go. And she's like, okay, no problem. So I picked up her stuff and we were going down the hall to go to the underground parking. And she's still, I'm like, you can't do that. When you breathe out, horse lips. So she's like, okay, no problem. We're walking down the hall and she's like, oh, damn. Okay. So thankfully, she lived right around the corner from the hospital. And we get there and we get into the triage area, and the nurse was in with another patient. And I said, okay, so we're here and she's pushing. And the nurse, who's probably heard this 1,000 times before, and you've been like 2 centimeters, says, yeah, go into the curtained area and have her put on the gown. And I'm like, okay, but you get we're pushing. And the nurse is like, yeah, no problem. I'm like, okay. So we get into the curtained area. She takes off her clothes and her pants and underwear, and the Cervidil falls out onto the ground. Clearly it worked. She puts on the gown and she gets into the bed, and all the while she's still, and I go, you don't have to do that anymore. Like, we're here. We're in a hospital now. And the nurse, it felt like it was 30 minutes, but the nurse came in, fairly quickly afterwards, even though it felt like forever, and lifted the sheet to check my client, and there was baby's head. So yeah, we were pushing. So usually what will happen when it's decided that you're going to stay, we were staying, they'll get you to walk to your room where you're going to be admitted. Well, we weren't walking because that baby was literally going to fall out. And what they did was, though, buttons were pushed, alarms went off. They pushed the bed with my client in it out a door that we hadn't come in to a room across the hall, which I'm pretty sure was never used for birth. And another nurse was running behind because the obstetrician was actually in a surgery, and it was a much smaller hospital, so there wasn't any residents. So they I think two more pushes and that baby was born. Now, I think Horselips got us there. I think Horselips got me not delivering this baby in the parking lot. I think Horselips bought us just a small amount of time to get us to the hospital. It's not going to buy you a lot of time, but it will buy you a little bit of time. And if you, again, if you feel like you have to push, but you're not fully dilated yet, they don't want you pushing on a cervix that isn't fully dilated, because what will happen is you'll actually start to swell. And it's not fair to have done all that work and now you're swelling and going in the opposite direction. So you want to make sure that if you are feeling that urge to push, but you're not fully dilated yet, that you're trying to ease off that pressure and not push. As I say, I highly encourage you to not discount non-medical comfort measures. They can be very helpful, particularly in the early stages of labor when you're just not sure what's happening, and trying to go with the flow and just rock those contractions can be very helpful in getting you maybe to not go to the hospital too early, which is sort of can be a concern that some people have. Um, Being able to stay home longer can also, minimize the amount of time you are going to be in hospital, and potentially, less interventions that might be needed. So even if you're planning to get an epidural, which I totally understand, do not discount non-medical comfort measures to at least get you to that point where getting an epidural makes sense.